Work session, Goodyear City Council, September 17, 2007. We have 5 of our members of council here today. We were going to start with the classification comp study, but Lori Hillebrand has to go over to a meeting in Avondale. It's their council meeting, and explain I-10 a little bit more. So we're going to move to the second item first, and then we'll return. This gets long. We will revert back to the first one due to airplane reservations that have to be met tonight. So,
okay.
Laura, you're up.
Thank you, Mayor. Before I start, I'd like to begin with a few thank yous, because it's not just me that's up here. I had a lot of people helping me, and beside me there were lots of consultations. So I'd like to thank the universities, UIW, Franklin Pierce, and St. Francis, because I consulted with them. I'd also like to thank Julie Reese of Tri-Advocates. I also went to a Sister Cities conference in Peoria that was very helpful. I'd like to thank that city. I also spoke with Steve Methvin from Glendale about youth commissions, so I'd like to thank him for his time. And then within our own city itself, Harry Paxton, our ECDEV director, was very helpful, as was Elizabeth Simpson from legal, and Connie Stepnitz and Kathy Posian, I think, are going to be very helpful in implementing this type of program, should you choose to go with it. So with everything in the city, we need an acronym, so this is the acronym I came up with, HEP. This is people, energy, and participation. Starting new commissions and committees is about bringing the voice of our citizens to the city. So I think of it as a peppy time. But I'm not going to do a cheer for you or a cartwheel. There are 3 new groups that are being offered for consideration tonight. One is the Goodyear Higher Education Advisory Committee. The other is the Sister Cities Commission. And the next one is the Youth Commission. The Goodyear Higher Education Advisory Committee, I'll start with this one. In our letters of intent with both UIW and Franklin Pierce, we have indicated that we would form some sort of committee to address the interests of the higher education institutions. So that's part of what this body would do. Its purpose would be to provide a forum for education and economic development policy discussion, and to support and promote the higher education initiative. To start out this committee, the suggested membership would be the mayor, a council member, our economic development director or his designee, some representatives from the universities, local business interests, and government-related interests. Those have not yet been chosen or just talked to, for obvious reasons. We don't want to put those names out yet. The term of this committee would be for approximately 2 years, and then we'd take a look at it and reevaluate whether or not to continue it. This committee is seen more as something the city would kickstart off. It would eventually spin off on its own and maybe operate as like a nonprofit 501c3. But it requires, to get it going, it requires some city rule to begin it. So this committee would be advisory regarding our higher education initiative. The next commission is the Sister Cities Commission. I'm sure all of you have heard of Sister Cities. It's quite common among many different cities. And the purpose of this commission would be for economic and cultural development. It's definitely a global economy. So developing a sister city would give us an opportunity to work on those links, as well as possibly provide festivals or events to help explore our cultural options. The suggested membership would be 15 people, including the mayor, a council member, and again, our economic development director or a designee, and the purpose behind that would be to give the commission more of an economic development feel to it. The members would serve for 3 years, and the role would be advisory regarding the potential sister cities and development of cultural opportunities in our city. Here are some examples of sister cities. Sierra Vista, which is a city of about our size, but not in a major metropolitan region, currently has 2 sister cities, one in Germany, one in Mexico. Gilbert, which is about 3 times our size, has 3 sister cities in Ireland, China, and Africa. Mesa, which is a city pretty close to build out, has a population of 500,000, 10 times as big as us, and they have 5 sister cities in Canada, Peru, New Zealand, Mexico, and China. And then Tempe, I included because Tempe is really one of the more established sister city programs. Their program began in the 70s and is now currently operates separately from the city, but they have 7 sister cities: China, France, Mali, New Zealand, Germany, Macedonia, and Ireland. So just to give you an idea of what other cities are doing with sister cities based on their population. And then finally, a youth commission. Again, this is another very common type of commission we see in a lot of different cities. The youth commission would provide a forum for students to develop leadership through city government. For instance, students could come in and shadow a council member. They could come in and watch council meetings. It would also provide an opportunity for youth to give input on youth-related issues, such as recreational programming, special events, another, an opportunity to hear the voice of our youth in our city. The membership suggested would be 20 high school age people. It would be suggested that their terms be staggered, so we're not turning over 20 high school kids every year, but stagger the terms so that, and also to give lots of different students the opportunity if they want this. And again, this commission would again have an advisory role. And I think I want to mention here too, with all of these commissions, the suggestion is that they start off with a very advisory role. We're not suggesting that, or I'm not suggesting that they be given a rather large budget or certain objectives in mind, that these commissions themselves would come up with some of those objectives. They would do the research, they would do the legwork, they would come to council and then say, this is a project we would like to do and this is what we think it would cost, and then seek your approval for that, versus requiring a lot of upfront investment at this point in time. There are, I suppose, considering this a PEP initiative, those are 3 new commissions to talk about, but there are some existing commissions we'd also like to maybe roll out at about the same time. Last May, the council approved the Arizona Centennial Committee for the city of Goodyear, so that it's about time for that to be formed. And also the finance department will be working on forming their bond committee. And so to get the citizens excited about this opportunity, the idea is to roll these all out together, and this is the suggested time frame in September, late September, make an announcement, update the website so that people can see what commissions, committees are available, what they are, what their terms are. Also to be able to apply online, which is something we don't currently have available. We're talking about revising the application form as well. And then in October, receive applications for these committees and commissions. In November, have council subcommittees review the applications so that each commission and committee would have a separate subcommittee, that there would be several subcommittees, not just one council subcommittee for all of them. And then in December, hopefully come back to council with a list for approval of appointments, and then in January begin the formation meetings. I think I promised someone 9 minutes, and I think I'm 3 over, but I'd be happy to take any questions.
And we started a little late. Start over on the left, Joanne.
On the sister cities, how do you pick a city? How do you go about deciding that with the millions in the world?
There's a group called the Sister Cities International that the city could join, and that would serve as a facilitator for making some of those links and doing some of that research and investigation.
Okay.
So that would be one way to find something. And it might be that, within Goodyear, we do have some international presence here. We have the German Air Force and Lufthansa. We also have Oxford Aviation. So there might be some things natural within the city that would make a good fit.
Sure. And on the youth commission, I've actually had many parents ask me about that, but parents that want to be part. So this, we're just speaking of 20 kids. No parent involvement then, is that correct?
The reason for that recommendation is after we spoke with Glendale and learned about their experience, what the opinion there was that if a parent sat on the commission, that parent would have a lot of influence. And part of the purpose of the maybe, depending on the parent, I suppose. But so the idea was that if the students would learn to be, what kind of opportunity could we make for them to be the most self-governing, would be not to have any adults who actually were part of the commission and part of that process. Of course, we would need some adults to help be a liaison to city.
A facilitator type of help them steer them, and that would be staff, I would take it, or is that the thought?
It could be staff. If it could be.
I don't know.
However,
so that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, that's the idea, is that it would be staff. For instance, with the youth, imagine what they might be interested in would be some parks and recreation issues. So we might ask somebody from Parks and Recreations to come to the meetings. Or if the youth would be shadowing council, then somebody from the office of the mayor and council could help and facilitate with that.
Okay.
But it's it's open. It's what if you prefer to see it a different way, it certainly can be
I think the
changed.
city of Avondale actually, because I know the person in charge of their youth commission, and there is an actual staff person that really oversees that, and so that's why I asked. Okay, thanks. Thank you.
Councilmember Lord?
Thank you, Lori, your presentation. On the youth commission, one thing I would like to see, I see it's a 2-year for 10 members will go on for 2 years. I would like to see someone chosen out of that second year to be the transition person for the next year's group. Otherwise, teaching leadership, and then this young person would be the leader and help organize that next session.
Okay, great idea.
Just a suggestion. The other thing is, when I had the opportunity, we lived in Okinawa, I taught English to the city councilman of Okinawa, and they had a sister city in Virginia. And they used to talk about the trading of cultures, and it really means a great deal to somebody across the pond to have this opportunity. And they actually did plan their money so that they could take a trip. Every 2 years, I think they had their scheduled up to take to the United States. But the cultural exchange was magnificent, so I look forward to us having that opportunity here.
Great. Thank
Great.
you.
Thank you. Councilmember Cavalier.
Yeah, on both. It was amazing. Last night I had dinner with a man that was born in China and plays in the Phoenix Symphony, as a matter of fact, and he was talking to me about that very thing, about why doesn't Goodyear have a sister city, and because the culture exchange is just amazing what can be done between the cities and bring the cultures across the pond, so to speak. But anyway, it could be with any country. He just had mentioned that he had some experience in Phoenix with that, and it was very rewarding and something we really should look at to develop culture from another country that would be different than ours, that give us a different outlook. On the youth committee, have you checked with other cities on how successful the youth committee is? I have some concerns with that, because during the time I lived in Scottsdale, we had youth committees on some of the councils and some of the on the school board, for instance, and it was a detriment at times, because it seemed that members of the council would hear a youth speak and say, well, if this is what youth wants, no matter how good it was the fact that this is what our young people want, and they go right along with it. And I'm concerned about how much influence in the wrong direction that would bring to the city, and I have some concerns. I can see with the parents and having the parents a part of it, but I'm concerned with the student angle, and unless we really get a handle on it, and have a way of handling that, use some kind of methodology that works for us and not against us. But the idea is great. Of course, the higher education
It will work
committee
for
is
us,
great.
Frank. It will
Pardon?
work for us.
It would?
It will work, I'm sure.
Oh, okay.
Because we're still mom and pop, just because they give an idea, which we want to hear, right?
Yeah, but I've heard some of the people say, "Oh, gee, if this is what they want, this is what we should do," and I think sometimes that isn't the right answer. So, anyway, I just caution you: be careful with that.
It would be set up to be an advisory type of commission, so the teenagers would come to the council with an idea, and hopefully it would be well-researched, well thought out, and proposed in a
Well, if they
professional
come
way.
to council to learn, that's one thing. But if they come to the council to try to influence council, and sometimes teenagers do that, as you well know.
There's
Well,
nothing
no,
wrong
you
with
may
the
not know yet.
Staff having a position on that, though, right? No,
No, I don't
the
see any
staff could
problem
have
with
a
that.
position which is in opposition to that commission.
I suppose if the
Possibly.
teenagers came up with an idea that didn't work, then
Yeah.
staff could let them know this is why it would not work, and these
So
are some
it's
concerns.
sort of mentorship on our part also. I mean, this isn't just.
No, but I think we have to be careful with it, make sure that that's what it is.
Certainly, certainly. So I'm sure with staff's direction, and of course with their maybe mentorship from this council, probably have some really fine ideas come out of it.
My 16-year-old dressed me today. So I just thought I'd mention that.
She did a good
This
job.
is a work session. It's supposed to be fun. Okay.
Vice Mayor?
I just, I don't know if it makes you feel any better, Frank, but I rollerbladed around to about 1,500 homes when I first got elected and still ended up here. I probably looked about 1,500 homes in the city of Goodyear. I probably looked like I was 18, but I still ended up here and had a
Well, I
voice.
rollerblade, so I'm a lot older than you.
On the higher ed advisory committee, I actually was going to go, and a little bit opposite of my colleague, but I was going to suggest that maybe a member of the youth commission ought to potentially be a member of the higher education advisory committee, given that we want them to be customers of the higher education that's going to occur here in Goodyear.
Yeah.
And so if there was somebody like a student body president or an honor student or some category that would be filled that could give articulate recommendations as to what would attract them to stay in the city of Goodyear and regentrify them through that process. So that was one thought I had while I was reading your stuff over the weekend on the higher education advisory. On the youth commission, I would just, and I assume you'll put together some formulation for an application process, but rather than just throwing an application out there on a youth commission, I almost would want a principal, or in the case of a homeschooler, their advisor or somebody kind of signing off and saying, yeah, this vouching for the commission member that would participate in that process, such that we're not taking away. Not much different than athletics. I mean, I assume, I don't have a kid in athletics here yet, but I assume
The reference and
you've got to get a reference in order to be in athletics or a
Good
student
grades.
council or anything. Yeah. So I would look to the high schools for that. The other aspect of the youth commission is potentially a geographical balance, and that wasn't mentioned in the COAC. But so that if we're looking for juniors and seniors, I mean, we always know that going into it, but we might want to reserve a certain number of spots. Currently, that's a manageable thing for high schools that we have in the city, but as the city grows, it will become unmanageable because we'll have a number of high schools that will outnumber the number of youth commissioners probably. But that's something to think about even in the future, is how are we going to adapt when we do have, if we do have 20 or 30 high schools. Are we going to grab that balance?
Okay.
And then the sister city thing, I'm interested in hearing it. I assume, are these commissions going to get together and form their own charters then, and form their own tasks, or are we giving them their task by ordinance?
It's not set up for the task to be given by ordinance, but it
Right.
sure can be if that's what you want.
I almost would. I mean, in the case of the youth commission, I mean, I would almost think, the first 20 that get together could come together and form their, with some guidelines, form their own charter and get some buy-in and
Sure,
keep
there's
that going.
guidelines from other cities we've worked with that we can use as
And maybe
a
even in the higher-
sample how we want to put it together, and then we may have some other ideas to feed in with that. So, but I do agree. I think it has to be structured
Yeah.
so that it leads to success.
Okay.
I'm all ears.
Could you show your schedule again, Lori?
Sure. I'm not sure, can Eddie pop that up again?
It's looking.
I think I have to,
Eddie's getting it. Thanks.
there we go. Oop.
There it is.
Thank you.
Okay, we all agree with the schedule, try to follow that?
I think
that-
I think the holidays may challenge us. You might want
Yeah, I do
to
too.
bump that January back to February, just to allow some.
And that would be fine. As far as determining its organizational foundation, whether it's a charter or an ordinance, that needs to fit in there somewhere. That decision has to be made.
Yeah, I saw you had draft ordinances, and you're going to come back to us, I assume, with ordinances at some point, but where that fits in.
Okay,
Okay?
I'll fit it in.
Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's, those are things we need to do. So thank you. Okay, Kate. Ms. Wilkinson.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, council members. When Phase 1 of the Matrix report was presented to us, they recommended that we do the classification, compensation, and benefit study a year or two earlier than what we had planned. So we immediately went out for bids, and we formed a very distinguished selection team to help us interview the candidates and review the bids. So we want to be sure to thank Vice Mayor Antoniak and Councilmember Lord and Councilmember Sousa for serving on that team, and also our acting city manager, who he didn't know what he was getting into when he said yes to you all, the fire chief and your chief of staff who just left, members of the police and fire department and purchasing department and HR departments also served, as well as the Avondale HR director. And tonight we have Ruth Ann Elledge here with us, who is the CEO of Consulting Services for the Waters Consulting Group, and she's going to be presenting an overview of the study that she's going to be doing for us. And another item that Matrix also recommended was that the council develop and adopt a pay philosophy. And so throughout the study, as Ruth Ann works with us and with you all, she'll be working with you individually and collectively to develop that study or that philosophy for our city. And I'm going to immediately turn over the podium to Ruth Ann, but by way of introduction, you can know that she's been with the Waters Consulting Group for 7 years after retiring from the City of Austin as her HR director. Thank you.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be here. I want to thank you for the opportunity for Waters Consulting to work with you on this very important project. And tonight's briefing is what I would call an informal briefing. It's an opportunity for me to present to you an overview of the project, answer any questions that you might have about the project, and pose to you a couple of policy decisions that I'd like to work with you on that will help set the stage for many phases of the compensation study. So with that said, I'm going to walk through this presentation. Again, if you do have any questions anytime, please don't hesitate to stop me and we'll get them answered when they cross your mind. Just very briefly, Waters Consulting has been doing this type of work really since the mid-'70s and incorporated as Waters Consulting in the mid-'80s. Raleigh Waters has been with the company since its inception, and our area of specialty is in public sector. So while we do studies for not only public sector but also private sector, we have done quite a few here in the state of Arizona and nationally. We also do other types of work, executive search, performance management, those kinds of things. If you have any interest in finding more about our company, very simply it's just www.watersconsulting.com, and you can see our list of principals and services and other consultants that are involved in the company. When we start a study of this nature, we're looking at several key strategic questions that help kind of set the stage for different phases of the project. Certainly we're looking at what compensation strategies are working for you now and which ones you think you may want to consider that would help you better attract and retain employees and strong performing employees. We're looking at how you compare to what other organizations are paying for similar types of work and what other strategies they have adopted that work well for them. This will also include not only a salary survey, but a best practices and benefit study. So it will be a very comprehensive review, and part of what we'll talk about later in this presentation is who do you want to compare yourselves to, because that is a key policy decision as part of this project. We'll also look at how jobs are classified, whether or not they have the appropriate designation under the Fair Labor Standards Act to make sure you're following all legal compliance issues, and just to ensure that you have a strong classification system that accurately describes the work that's being performed within the city of Goodyear. We have what I call guiding principles that we try to follow throughout this project, particularly when we come to key policy decisions, because it's important that we build a system for you that meets your individual needs. Every city, every organization has its own culture, its own management philosophy, its own way of doing business. And so we want to make sure that the system that we're putting together for you meets those needs individually here. While we bring a methodology and a process that works well in studies of this nature, they all have to be tailored to the individual needs, so we don't have a canned product that we bring to you. It's something that we work with you throughout the project to tailor it specifically to the city. But we are working to also achieve what we call both internal and external equity. And internal equity is how positions fit into a structure that is equitable. And some employees will call it, is it a fair system? Is it fair that my position fits in here and other positions fit in above or below me? And we'll go through a fairly detailed process. You're already familiar with point factor job evaluation. We're going to tweak that system that you already have in place, further define those factors and the levels that will be applied to your individual jobs to look at what the overall hierarchy of jobs is within the city. That external equity is the market comparison. How do you compare to what other organizations pay? Certainly we want to develop a system that actually is flexible enough so that you can continue to manage it long after a consultant leaves. It is your system, and it is one that you will continue to maintain on your own, so it should be flexible. And it certainly should be fiscally responsible, because we know we're all good stewards of tax dollars and want to continue that so that you can continue in a fiscally responsible manner. This is an overview of how the project will be conducted. It begins with the job analysis phase. Part of that is already in process now. Employees are working with their supervisors and managers to update their job descriptions, and we'll be having meetings tomorrow with employees to gather even more information about the types of work that's being performed and the environments in which they are being performed. All of that information is used to help update the job descriptions and to conduct that internal job evaluation process, as well as the external market, the survey process. When we conduct a study, we don't send out the name of a job title and say, do you have something called this? We send out a survey that says, here is the basic overview of this position. Do you have positions that perform this type of work? So that we are able to match the types of work that are being performed, the skill levels and requirements for those positions. So the job description questionnaires and the survey, the information that we get from employees and supervisors is used to help write those summaries and to conduct that internal evaluation. Then we're able to take that internal hierarchy of positions, connect that with the market data to update or revise your pay structures. And at that time we may consider some design changes, the width of ranges, the number of ranges you have, and the number of actual pay structures you may consider adopting. So this, in general, is an overview of the project. All of it is brought together in a final report that has guidelines on how you want to continue to administer your system and how you want to administer pay within the system. We do think that throughout this project it is critical to have involvement. It is something that makes the system much more successful if along the way we have many opportunities for involvement from employees at all levels. I met last week with department directors, met with several of you individually as council members, just to kind of get a sense of what your special issues are or concerns that you may have. We'll continue to do that throughout the project. There are many opportunities built in for the steering committee, employees in general, management supervisors, department heads, the project director, HR, executive team, and the city council as well. So we think that will help give us ongoing feedback and participation to make the system better. We've also established a toll-free number and dedicated email address so that at any time, if there's any employee, whether it's a supervisor or a frontline employee that has a question about the study, they can contact us directly to get more information about why they need to fill out this form, where are we in the project, when do you think you'll have a final report or any recommendations. Just very briefly, I'm going to walk through the individual phases of the project. I've already mentioned most of them, so I'll go through this fairly briefly. The job analysis phase, which is the first part or the first step in this project, involves a very detailed review of information about positions and the work that's being performed, how they're similar, how they're different, what are the different skill levels. This is the time when we do the FLSA review to determine exemption status to see if there's any recommended changes as a result of the information we've gathered. We also look at titles, how work is grouped together to classify positions. And it's at this time that we may make recommendations on either collapsing jobs or even splitting jobs out if there's several incumbents that are called the same thing, but they're doing very different work. So again, this is a very thoughtful, detailed review of the individual work being performed, and it will involve some individual interviews, either in focus groups or individually of employees, to confirm or to gather even more data about the types of work that's being performed. Once we've got a good classification system, have good solid data on positions, we'll go through this internal review. You are already using a point factor job evaluation system. In fact, it is one that Waters Consulting created for you back in 2000. Since that time, we have evolved and developed and advanced that system, and we'll bring those improvements to you to help even more clearly differentiate between levels of positions within the organization. That will include a very thorough review that helps result in another rank order review of positions. I think it's important over time, as you add positions or as positions change, you should periodically go back and reevaluate them all at one time so you're very clear on the relationships of those positions and the relative value of them. Having a hierarchy of jobs is important because you will not have market data for every position in the organization. And so the question then becomes, how do you determine what should be the rate of pay or the range of pay for that position? If you have a clear understanding of how jobs fit in relation to each other, you can group jobs of similar value together, and then the market data that you do have for those jobs that are grouped together can help establish the range of pay for those that you do not have good matches for. And so understanding your hierarchy of jobs is a very important step within a compensation study of this nature. And we will use a job evaluation team, which will be representatives of key management to work through that process so that we are clear on the differences between positions. When we do job evaluation, we use a series of compensable factors. Each one of them is weighted. They have levels, and so you're able to take those weights and divide the point values for that total system among those various positions to create a hierarchy. And what we're looking at is what a job requires most of the time under normal circumstances. We're not looking at the individual in the position. We're assuming that there's no performance issues, and we're looking at job content. And these are the factors that we'll be using. They should look familiar to those of you who have used the point factor system here in Goodyear. However, some of the factors have been redefined, both the overall definition and the definition of levels within those factors. Once we've gone through and evaluated all the positions, we'll end up with something very simplistically put like this, where we have a hierarchy of jobs that can be differentiated based on their point values. And you can then begin to group those jobs that have similar point values together, and this is a precursor to a pay grade. Of course, the next step then would be dollars and to bring in market information. And so determine who you want to compare yourselves to. We have established what we think are good criteria for determining who you want to compare yourselves to. And basically, it's who do you compete with when you hire, and who do you lose people to when they go work somewhere else for more money. Who's close by, who has similar services, because you want to have good matches for positions. And there may be some other factors that you may want to take into consideration. In this discussion, this is key in the very first part of the project. And so I've had conversations with several of you and with department directors, and these are some of the suggestions that have been brought forward that help meet that criteria. You can see that it's predominantly cities. There are also some special circumstances, for example, water positions, looking at Arizona American Water. There's some other private water utilities that we may want to draw from. There's also some fire districts and some other areas that we may want to take into consideration in collecting data. And I guess my question tonight is what feedback you may have about this market definition, and if there's any organizations that you think are missing, or are there any here that you think are not appropriate for inclusion in this study?
You want that discussed now?
That would be, yes, please.
On the published private sector, do you indicate to us in your report, we saw a big push on planners, and a lot of planners went out the door, to go to private sector jobs when the housing market was robust, and now that that's dropped off, I know a lot of those individuals are either out looking for a different kind of work or moved on to somewhere else. You kind of let us know in your report some of those circumstances and the ebb and flow, and to expect that to happen.
Yeah,
in a certain market. Because engineering, planners, that might happen in water and wastewater as well. I don't know.
Mm-hmm. I think you have to look at part of this is discussions with managers about who they have been competing with when they've hired, where people have left to go work when they leave here. And I think it's not necessarily appropriate to use private sector data for all positions, and in fact many positions will not have a match. A good example of that would be your managers or directors. I wouldn't recommend that as a match for private sector. In fact, the vast majority of them would not. But a lot of your positions, for example, equipment operators, you may have difficulty in losing some to that area. You might have some trades workers. You may have some admin staff or financial staff. Engineering could be one of them. Planners may be some of them as well. But I think you have to be careful how you select those positions to compare to private sector. And it would be private sector data that represents this area, this region. It wouldn't be national private sector data or anything. It would be something that would be more for this particular area, the Phoenix area.
Further comment or question on that?
Yeah, well, I would think I've worked for an engineering company, and so I can't help it. We've got 200 positions that are open in the Southwest United States and 2,000 people. So 10% of our workforce we're looking to hire. I can't imagine we'd probably also face similar challenges in that environment in city-driven processes. Maybe not just us, but other cities in the valley. So it would seem appropriate there to compare and contrast. But that's just my personal experience.
And private sector data would be one data point among all the other information, so it wouldn't be the driver of the market position, but it would be a piece of data that would be included to perhaps influence it to a certain degree, but it would not overwhelm your market information. So, for example, if we had 8 cities, it would be one data point with the other 9 cities or 10 cities that would be providing data as well. Okay. Are there any other comments about this list? Is any concern?
Would you consider the state and the county benchmark organizations for managerial jobs?
They could be, yes. Mm-hmm. In fact, we can add those if you would like for us to do that.
I don't want to be final on that, but it's something to think about.
At this point, we're trying to gather together a list of potential potential organizations, and I'll add those 2 on there because I'd rather collect the data, analyze it, and decide if we've got strong matches or not.
other questions or comments?
There's nothing you see here that you have heartburn over or decide can't really, okay, good. The second policy question is, where do you want to be in relation to the market data? And this is a difficult policy decision. It's what Kay was referring to earlier in the matrix recommendations, is for council to adopt a pay policy. I'm not asking you to do that tonight. Obviously, that requires quite a bit of consideration. But if you have some sense of where you may want to fall out in these 4 options, that would help us begin to, once we have collected the data and analyzed where you currently are, to begin developing some options for you for consideration. For example, we could do an option at market and an option at market sensitive, or an option at market and an option at competitive. And then we would also determine what are the different costing scenarios, and then you could make some decisions about overall where you want to be. I do know that in the past, when we've looked at where your policy has been many years ago, it was around, I think, about 106% of market. I think currently now it's closer to 101%, so it has declined some over time. And I guess this is a good time for council to take some time to think where they really want to be in relation to market. Is there any feedback on this issue tonight?
Pardon me?
It's a hard issue to decide. But I think from just my personal observation coming in, it seems like you've lowered a great deal from the beginning when you're at 106%. Although not being around at that time and not being able to.
I was, and it wasn't, I didn't think it was justifiable necessarily 106. 101 is probably a little low though. And to me, competitive makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, that's when we had this discussion. That's what Lauren and I were saying, that everybody's vying for the same jobs in the valley, all the cities.
I know.
And it's just really competitive, and so we need to be realistic of where we need to be in order to hire. And we think we have the best of the best, and we want to continue that. So
Okay.
it is a difficult decision.
Well, can I also add that, especially as having my own business and understanding this, I can agree with the competitiveness, but I also think that, and this is where that survey will come into play, that it's not always about money. I mean, there's perks and there's benefits that will turn somebody's head, I mean, whether it be something to do with childcare or housing, or, I mean, I had an employee that got a clothing allowance. I mean, it can be very creative, and those are the things that, sure, they may see the salary figure, but then when they see this long list of everything else I get with it, that is a human need, is what you're talking about then, and then they'll feel appreciated. And those are the things that you have to strive for also, and I think that survey will really play key into that.
And if there are specific things that you're interested in, if you would please let Kay or myself or someone know about that particular benefit, we'll make sure that we have thoroughly researched it. So if there's any ideas or thoughts that you have, because a total compensation package, you're correct, is a balancing act of direct pay with the other benefits and options that are available to employees. And so there's no one right or wrong answer. It's what works best here in Goodyear.
So I think one of the advantages we have over the private sector in certain areas of employment is that we do have that package, and we do have the health care. And so many of the smaller private companies, they just don't have the resources to do that. So I think that weighs heavily, I think, on it towards an advantage for the city. But again, there's a balance involved.
When you talk about the scale of aggressive to market sensitive, and you're talking about 100% or 105%, you're saying of salaries, but do you do that with the total package?
This is for direct pay at this point. And so we're looking at actual average salaries in the market and what relationship your pay structure first, and then your actual pay is to market. So there's really two decisions to make. Is first, where do you want your pay structures to be in relation to market? and then you decide how you want to move employees into that new structure and where you want them to be in relation to actual pay.
I'd be curious, and I don't know if you asked this in the survey, but on the director and manager level folks, because we're going to see a lot of knowledge vacuum leaving the workforce. And I'm curious if other cities in the valley are paying to move folks from other parts of the country or other parts of the region
Relocation costs?
into their new environment. And if traditionally we've maybe done a little bit of it, but not much of it, I don't know. I'd like to see us compared, contrast on that.
Buy our own moving van? Is that what you're saying?
Well, no, I mean, I think we're gonna come across experiences where we lose talent due to the fact that they strictly can't afford to
Sure.
move their family out here, and we may really desire to have that.
And that's when we talked about incentive packages.
Right.
Whether it be through financial programs for housing, or there's a number of things you could interject in that formula.
Yeah, I've seen some cities get very aggressive and even have assistance with home loans and,
Yeah, we've discussed that with HR before about that type of program, because where I came from, they had that type of program,
Right.
so.
but that will be part of the survey document.
Could you explain to me what market sensitive means? What does that entail?
Generally, and that's a term that we call within a certain range of market. So it could be 5% below up to 5% above for individual positions. So it's kind of a range of tolerance for relationship between your pay structures and your employees to the market average salaries. So it could be as low as 5% below the market average up to as high as 5% above the market average.
So basically, we're saying make or break a deal, is that what you're telling me?
Well, that is a much more liberal. Actually, it's conversely, it's conservative, because you're saying we're going to tolerate a lot of difference in market pay. And so it's typically used when you're trying to make something more affordable, because you are saying that we're okay if salaries and pay structures drop below the market average.
Do you need anything from us right on this?
Well, let me see if I can summarize what I thought I heard, and please tell me if I'm misinterpreting. I think in terms of our comparisons to market, we'll be looking at market and some competitive levels a little above market average. Is that correct?
Well, I feel like we need to be competitive.
I think so.
I think we're at a point in our city we can't afford not to be competitive.
We have to be
We
above
don't have that
market.
luxury.
I think the market sensitive would get us into a situation where we'd be looking at it more frequently. It seems like if we fluctuated below, we'd be making a big jump in order to try and compete. I'd rather not play the experiment. I mean, it seems like.
I didn't hear any discussion about the higher aggressive level, so.
Well, don't you suppose with certain positions, one has to be a little more aggressive than across the board?
If it's across the board.
Yeah, but the thing, but everybody else is too. So if you're 105% of everybody else, you're still high. Like planners. I assume they're still in demand. I don't know, but are we devising a system here in which certain skills, such as those which are in greater demand, can receive a higher pay than other skills?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes. That's why I'm stating that there are certain
Yeah,
positions
there has to be an opportunity to do that.
that we could have the flexibility to be aggressive and be competitive in the other areas.
But, yeah, I guess I thought that competitive, though, is exactly that within a higher area of demand.
Right, you're probably right, because it goes up to 105%.
So, for example, a job could be $20,000 and a planner could be 30. Competitive would be 100 to 105% of 30 for a planner.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Yeah.
That's correct. And basically what it's saying is we're going to look at as much as 5% above market. Now, I think probably when Matrix was talking about a market policy, It's very easy to say our policy is 105% of market or 103% of market, and that's very clean. But I do think that if you have a little more flexibility for positions, then as long as you say I want to be within this 100 to 105, then it gives you the flexibility that you may want.
Pretty much in agreement on this?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It certainly comes above the 101% we're at the present time. I think that's a big
Yeah,
improvement.
we've got to go above that.
I'm sorry, what?
We do have to go above that
Yeah, we do.
1%.
We need to move.
That's not good.
Question relating to that, and maybe you were going to address it, is that how do we stay at that level and not, for the past few years, fall behind again? How are we going to stay there?
There will be written procedures on how you check your market on a scheduled basis, whether you decide you want to do it annually or every other year, so that you adopt some process for how you continue to monitor your market and make adjustments to it. And it should actually be built into your budget process so that it is all considered as part of your overall budgetary package.
And Ruth, you mentioned earlier in your presentation that you or your company would be with us for some time to assist us in the process. What did you mean by that? How much effort, how much time would you be willing to stay with us to see that this process?
Well, it's our policy, or it's our philosophy, that we're only successful if you're successful. So certainly we offer you at least a year of telephone consultation and assistance. I have several clients here in the Arizona area that I've done work for many years ago, and I still talk to them on a regular basis and advise them. So as long as it's not work that requires hours of time, we are available to help you if you have issues with a spreadsheet or if you have a policy question. If it requires an on-site, then we would negotiate something that would cover our expenses and the time spent. But generally, most things can be handled in a telephone conversation that is no charge to you.
But this contract goes beyond, you say at least a year beyond.
This contract includes a formal year of telephone consultation. Yes.
If there's any work beyond that, we'd have to
Or if you decided
negotiate that.
Yeah, if you decided that you wanted some additional analysis or additional work done, we would give you an hourly rate, and we would just work with you to max, so here's the max amount we charge you if you wanted something more than just telephone consultation. So,
Because I'd like to see you overseeing this for a while after it's done.
I don't think that's an issue. Part of it, too, though, is your HR staff and key managers are going to be intimately involved in the development of this, so that they are trained along the way. And they'll have all the numbers and the work and the results in the spreadsheets that we develop and have been trained on them.
Let me ask a question that may be the same question, just in a different manner so I'm clear. If we get comparisons at the competitive and the at market, which sounds like that's what you're going to do, and we decide that we're having trouble recruiting in police, there is nothing that stops us from going to 110%.
No.
It's just a mathematical equation at that point. You've got the data in front of you, just do the math. Right?
Right now, I'm just asking for some direction about where to come back to you with some options, and you may choose to change that. Nothing's carved in stone. Other questions or comments? Thank you for your feedback. Just very, very briefly after this, once we have collected the data, we've presented you with options. Certainly, the first thing we do is provide you also with where you currently are, where you think you want to be, what are some preliminary costs, any design changes that you may want to consider that we see in market, for example, steps or no, open ranges or not, increments in steps and those kinds of things are all helpful to see when you're trying to design a structure that's market sensitive. And then looking at what impact that has on employees and what can you afford to do, because again, affordability is an issue in a study of this nature. So that would be the next step after the collection of market data, and so your direction helps us know what options to bring to you to begin with, and then if you want to change that, that's fine. Again, we provide you with salary projections on an individual basis by department. If you have key funds, if you have any general fund versus special funds that you draw funds from to fund positions, we can allocate dollars to those funds as well. Look at all the fiscal impacts, look again at the benefits survey results and best practices, and work with you for you to decide how you want to balance direct pay with those other benefits and pay practices. And then again, have the system in place for utilizing this pay structure and how to maintain it or keep it up to the same market relationship you established with the results of this study. Policies and procedures, presentation of a final report, and documentation of the whole project. So, any questions? I think that's basically it.
Okay, thank you.
I appreciate your time tonight, and I'm looking forward to working with you on this project.
Okay, safe trip.
Thank you.
Neil Barton?
No, he's on his way to San Diego.
Oh.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm here tonight, and I'd like to introduce our design team and consultants that are brought on board to help us facilitate Phase 2, the aquatics facility. And to start that off, Michael Park is with EPG, and he is our lead consultant.
Thanks, Neil. Thanks for having us here, Mayor, Vice Mayor, and council members. I'd like to give you an overview tonight of this design process that we have gone through to date for the Foothills Community Park Phase 2. And just to give you a quick overview of the project, do I have to do anything here to turn this on? Okay. You saw this last week as well, but just to give you an overview of what is in this design phase for Phase 2 includes the baseball field as the first priority. Then additionally, there will be a maintenance building. The maintenance compound itself is being constructed as part of Phase 1. The maintenance building itself will be part of Phase 2. And then the aquatic center, as much as can be afforded, will be constructed in Phase 2 as well. Go now to have a discussion of the public input that we received from the public meeting that occurred on September 5th. We presented two options. Both of these options included plans and architectural renderings for the buildings. And what you see here in this layout for option 1 is a parking lot coming off the main entry drive, which also doubles as the entry drive for Estrella Foothills High School. You will recall that the city did enter into a cross-use agreement with the school district for use of facilities for this park, and that does include parking. So there is a vast amount of parking just right across the main entry drive that will service the aquatic center as well. In the aquatic center here, we have a bathhouse and an equipment building. This is a spectator area. In general, this is the competition pool area, and I'll let Jim Bays with H2O go into more detail here in a moment. Play pool area and future expansion would be a lazy river component. And the option 2 that we presented to the public was very similar. We had the main entry off of the driveway, and then the bathhouse building, competition pool area, play pool area, and again the lazy river. We solicited input from the citizens via a survey, and we received several input surveys back that night, as well as the city did put these documents on the city's website, and where today we have received a total of 52 surveys back. By and large, they do tell us that option 1 is their preferred option. About 28 folks, if I recall the numbers, preferred option 1. a lesser amount for option 2, and then some folks didn't give us their opinion one way or the other. With that, I would like us to go into more detail on the design that is presented. And with that, I would ask that Jim Bays with H2O come up and walk you through the design for the Aquatic Center on both options 1 and 2. And after he presents that, Virginia, I'd like for you to come up and discuss the architecture for each phase before we move on to the next.
Good evening. I'm Jim Bays with H2O Design. Thank you so much for allowing us to be here. I'm going to put option 1 up and kind of lead you through here real quick. As you're coming through the parking lot and through the control building, you will notice a competition pool, and we have a dive pool along with the lap pool, 8 lanes, 25-yard competition set up for FINA competition, high school competition, and U.S. swimming. It's also on a raised platform, so it's 30 inches above the normal deck, which we do for convenience of programming, control, and sightlines and life safety. It's good to have various elevations of deck if you have more than one program or 2 programs going on, and that we have. We have a control feature in the middle of this facility, which is a lifeguard building with 360 degrees, and Virginia is going to talk about that a little bit more in detail. As you're walking down the pool and the deck area, you'll notice a larger leisure pool area. That leisure pool has a splash pad pop jet system, much like is what at Kierland or Desert Ridge. It's located in the zero beach entrance of this pool. Has a long beach entrance area. Also has interactive play. Interactive play system with a dumping bucket, so it gives a lot of variety, a lot of water movement, a lot of features for grade school kids and older kids to play on. As you're walking down, you discover that you have a multi-use area in this area here, which is a lot of water, deep water, 3 foot deep, 4 foot 6 deep for training and multiple use. I kind of put the emphasis on training areas, swimming, learning how to swim in those areas. You come around this corner and you'll see a slide pool, which we have dictated a couple of slides on this pool, 42-inch open flume and a speed slide. As you're walking around the deck, you notice that we have incorporated a lot of shade structure and a lot of areas for not only parents to congregate under shade while they're watching their kids learn how to swim, but also in the competition area, we also allow shaded spectator area, not only for the lap swimming, but also for the diving. And we have not ignored where teams can lay their bags and stuff to get ready for team meets, ample deck area around that. We've also incorporated a volleyball area, and just across from the wash, then we focus on later phasing in a lazy river. That lazy river is probably about 900 to 1,000 linear feet long, a lot of discovery areas in the lazy river. There's multiple components. Another slide structure for the lazy river, different than the slide structure on the leisure pool. A splash bowl, which is, I don't know if you're familiar with a splash bowl, it's almost like a toilet bowl that you go down a speed slide and then go around and around and around and then drop out. Completely safe. We put it in water parks across the country. In this lazy river, also, we've incorporated a feature called a flow rider, which is a surfing machine that's incorporated as part of the lazy river, needs the lazy river to function efficiently. We have multiple islands and bridges, shade again on the lazy river area, and landscaping throughout. And at this point in time, I think that I'll turn over to Virginia. And Virginia, if you'd talk about the buildings and the architecture.
Thank you, Jim. The architecture is meant to reflect what was done in both the master plan and in phase 1. If you recall, that was to have the structures both be integrated into the city of Goodyear and the surrounding facilities, as well as the high school that is just adjacent to this project. So for option 1, what we wanted to do is create a structure that captured the views from Estrella Parkway. With my finger here. So if I go back to this, well, if you look on the site plan in the front here, the curving structure is at the corner where Estrella Parkway is, and so the tall piece here and this entry plaza here is what you'll see as you travel down Estrella Parkway. The building is curved in form, which is similar to some of the forms that we've done in the master plan and in Phase 1. This structure helps to both give identity at the corner as well as hug the project and give some closure as well as some shading properties for the pool structures. We've then taken that building structure and then incorporated that into the pool equipment and into the seating area for the shade structure for the seating area. So it helps to make an enclosure as well as with this a see-through point, an ability as you come up in the entry plaza to see the structures beyond and what's happening beyond. Then the guardhouse is separated from the main bathhouse, and that gives the ability to have 360-degree view from the guardhouse. This will be the secondary guard function. Most of the lifeguards will be situated around the pool, but if there is a need for something additional, it's at a prime spot to be able to view the entire pool area surround. Those are some of the main points on option 1.
My colleagues have told me that I've missed some of some key elements in option 1. I don't know if you could throw option 1 back up again. The pools are designed with rim flow kinetics gutters, which brings the water surface to the top of the deck. It's just a rim flow. It's a great look and also great for efficiency of skimming and also for fast competition racing. When you move over and go down this lower level to this leisure pool area, you'll notice that this whole pool is rim flow coping. But in this area right here, there's called what we call a sunning wet deck, which is raised about 7 inches above water surface. It's completely tiled with a little concave with multiple jets of water being added to it so that you have about a 1/4 inch to a 1/2 inch continuous wet water through that area. It also doubles as a water feature where you can turn on more pumps and have water features and pop jets in that area. It's a fun place. It's a place where you know that the community will gather, and you can use it for sunning, you can use it for shade, you can use it for turn off the systems and use it for functions at that point. And so that's a sunning area. So the leisure pool has a lot of discovery, a lot of area in it that has a lot of dynamic, a lot of things for the community to enjoy.
Go ahead, Jim. Option 2.
Option 2 is pretty much the same type of components, different layout a little bit, different configuration. You have, as you're coming out, you still have the lap pool at the same height at the elevation of the building, lap and dive pool. You have dive, 2 1-meter boards and 8 lanes of swimming, 25-yard course. A little stairway in this area, kind of different than option 1, kind of an entrance to that pool. You will then step down to a lower level leisure pool. You do have, again, the zero beach entrance, the rim flow gutters, the splash pad and pop jet, shade to a point where it's not only it's close to the water and some of it's over the water. You have the interactive play system and then multiple use area for teaching and training, and also the slides as they're coming into the leisure pool. You have shade throughout on the deck, not only on the leisure pool, but again on the dive lap pool. And what's missing here is we do also have shade that's happening over this area, which allows shaded spectator area for the competition pool. And then you move across the wash and you have the same dynamic as the river in option 1, a little bit different shape, a little bit different function. And again, you have the splash boat, the pool slides, the bridges, the islands, and also the flow rider wave machine.
We wanted to explore something a little different in option 2. In this building, it is a more rectilinear building. We are also creating a plaza, although we have less of an opportunity to create a plaza with this particular siting with the straight drive entry. The building incorporates a lot of shade structures, which we are also using in the ball fields in in phase 1, which helps to bring color, helps to pre-cool the building, and helps to give some identity to the building. What this option doesn't do is it doesn't give you as much of the peek-through and the interaction that the option 1 building does. It does give you the entry court and a large wall with signage that helps to identify the entry and again draw you in. There are slightly less features in this bathhouse as the other bathhouse, but we also have the same pulled away lifeguard station that gives you a 360-degree view from that. That's what you saw in the site plan view.
Thanks, Virginia. Go back to the general master plan, if I may, just for a moment. I'd like to bring to your attention one of the feature of the whole master plan for the park included a native wash that exists on the site that carries about 120 CFS through the site and exits through 2 existing 36-inch diameter pipes underneath the Estrella Parkway. And you'll note that this does bisect the aquatic center. What we did show to the public meeting was both options did include that wash going through the center of both designs. One thing I will also discuss now will be the selection of the preferred alternative. Again, we did give surveys out to the public, and we received 52 responses back. By and large, over half did request that option 1 was their preferred option to proceed with. It would be our recommendation that we do proceed with that. There are unique opportunities in both alternatives, both options that don't necessarily should be precluded if one is selected over the other. There were some unique opportunities in option 2 that we would also like to consider including into option 1. That included a unique little area right here off of this north-south sidewalk is being constructed as part of Phase 1 right now and is the west boundary, if you will, of Phase 1, as well as this sidewalk across the north. There is an opportunity here to do a unique little playground that could be used in the off-season as part of Phase 1, in the off-season of the aquatic center, as part of Phase, let me back up, not the phases, but the soccer fields that would be constructed here, where we could fence off the aquatic center and open that up to public use, so you're getting good dollars out of your products that are being constructed this time. Whenever the pool is in session, that fence would swing around to the other side and make that playground and that potentially Ramada area secure to the aquatic center. Back to option 1. What we would request tonight is to get your comments on this. We do have $5.6 million is designated for this project. That does include the baseball field, the maintenance building, and the parking area, bathhouse, the control areas down here, including shade structures, the equipment building that would be sized for pumping capacity for both the competitive pool as well as the play pool. But the $5.6 million in today's economy essentially will end approximately right there. Where you'll get the
number again?
$5.6 million, where you'll get the parking lot, the bathhouse for the full build-out of all the phases of the aquatic center, and the competition pool at this time. To go a little further, to build what we heard from the public would be certainly what they would like to see, to include the play area of the pool would require approximately another $3 million. The ultimate build-out of the park, including the lazy river component itself, is approximately an additional $6 million on top of all that, and that's at today's dollars. And with that, I'd like to open it up and answer any questions the council may have.
Okay, thank you. Before we do that, though, is there anyone from the public that would like to comment? Ask you to keep your comments to 3 minutes, possibly.
Mayor and council members, my name is Charles Marshall. I'm a resident of Estrella at 17689 West Willow Drive up there. I've been to the hearing or the meetings with the parks on this, and one of the things that we've observed with Estrella is that we already have a interactive pool. We are going to get another interactive pool. And this park is going to serve principally the people that are within 3 miles of it, at least that's the concept of the community parks. Obviously, other people would be coming from other places in the city. So when looking at it, the thing that I think would be a priority, obviously, is the high school has to have the opportunity to have competition when they're 4A. And it's also good for the community to have an area where we can have competition. So the priority in my mind is definitely the competition pool and the diving pool. But the next part that right now is, as it's being planned, would be the interactive pool or the family pool with the beach. We're going to have almost duplicates of that in 2 places, one in Montecito, one in Mountain Ranch. So it wouldn't be something that the residents would run to use from that standpoint. But what would be unique is the other element up there is the lazy river. And if we could prioritize that ahead of the expenditures, I think that'd be a better way of doing the money, and it would also bring more people from Goodyear. We appreciate the fact that the council is interested in what Australia is doing and Australia's concerns, and in fact, getting the community park is a great asset for us. So that's what I would like to see is some way of prioritizing the lazy river in the scheme of things ahead of an additional interactive pool. Any questions, thoughts? Okay. Thank you.
Mayor, Council, if you don't mind, I'd like to comment on that. With that information that we have received from the public, we did take that into consideration and have actually talked to Newland about potential and the opportunity of actually partnering with these types of comments that we received. From what I have received from Newland is the second pool section has not been finalized and the amenities haven't necessarily been actually determined to move into construction.
The second pool where?
For the second pool that Montecito has, or Newland Communities actually planned on putting down is in the Montecito area. I think it's in a clubhouse of some sort. We're hoping to have a meeting hopefully within the next in the near future with Newland to see about partnering on this situation. As regards to phasing the lazy river before we could do the recreation, I can refer more to the design consultants in whether or not it's functional to actually move those around. In the way it's currently master planned, from my experience in construction, that would be somewhat of an operational logistics issue in the time frame that we would take to move those around. Mike or Jim, do you have any other comments in regards to the phasing of those?
Our experience has been that a lazy river element, just river, is hard to stand on its own if it's combined with just dive lap pool, which is deep water, which is 6 foot 6 inches deep. The river itself is 3 foot 6 deep. So the dynamics of the demographics of that is you might be leaving a demographic out here of those kids and those parents which will prefer not to go in the lazy river but to have that leisure pool area for their convenience. If you decided to phase out the leisure pool and just go with the lazy river, then I would recommend that you take that some element in that lazy river and make more leisure area, a beach entrance to the lazy river, which would be another, look at the design on that side, where you would then still reach all the demographics of the community, and not just lazy river people, not just competition pool, but the family-oriented 0 to 3 foot water is what we're trying to motivate for the community. So,
Okay, thank you. Let's start over here on the right. Councilmember Cavalier, any comments?
Yeah, just a question on the one, of course, the fencing. I assume the fencing is the pool is entirely fenced. Second is the volleyball, the sand court. Is that a problem with the sand court being this close to the swimming pool, with the sand being tracked into the pool area?
Well,
is that a problem?
in the facilities that we have designed and have built throughout the valley, we have really had not any complaints of any volleyball sand in the pools, and one primarily would be Gilbert Mesquite, which is almost 8 to 9 years old. With that volleyball area, we put in a foot wash that you would have to take the traffic from the volleyball area into the pool, that they would have to go through those streams of water in order to get into the pool area. Plus the amount of decking that you have from the volleyball area to the beach entrance or the pool, that sand usually falls off. Will there be a little bit of maintenance? Yes, there will be. I mean, but usually it's curtailed to minor stuff.
And then in the lazy river, you have one piece that's active, and is that a, this is blurred on our, and I can't see the distance there.
The flow rider,
Is that what that is?
it's a wave machine or a surfing machine, yes.
So your slide pool, it says here.
We have a lot of pieces that are active in the wave pool, some of them which aren't,
Okay, flow rider here.
Yeah,
Slide
shown.
pool here.
the
There's two
activity.
pieces.
The activity on the river is, we have the slides coming down in this area right here, and then the flow rider is in this area right here. One of the dynamics that the river also has is, it's not clearly shown or not shown, is interactive toys or interactive water going over the river, such as dumping buckets or streams of water going into the river. It's so intricate you probably would have missed them if they were shown on this scale. But there's a lot of activity going in the lazy river. Plus, one of the major components is discovery. Lazy rivers that don't get monotonous, and that you have more than one avenue to travel.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor?
The gentleman that got up from a Stray Mountain Ranch that lives down there, I actually had the same comment with staff when we met offline. And I didn't realize at the time when I was articulating this to staff that Montecito is considering something. I'll tell you, putting this on the books before Montecito isn't encouraging the developer to bring along a cost that may be associated with their development. It's actually discouraging the developer to put the money into their pool if they see that there's an option. But I have some of the same concerns in the sense of the capital expenditure here, in that if we do have one pool that's very similar at Montecito, and we do have another pool that is currently at Star Point. We've got those two pools, and I'm a homeowner, and I pay for that through my HOA dues. And now I'm going to go to a city pool and pay $1 or $2 or whatever the per head cost is to go in here. I'm not going to be encouraged as a resident within that 3-mile or 4-mile or 5-mile radius to do that. I'm going to go to the one I'm paying for on a monthly basis already. So I think that's something that we need to seriously consider, in the sense that we have a constituency there that's already paying for this kind of service. I'm not questioning the value of the design here. It's the thought process that goes into the placement. Gosh, you guys look like you got a lot of sun today. I'm sorry, I can't help that. I see Chief Gaylord looks like he's got a lot of sun. Brian looks like he's got a lot of sun. Been hanging out at a ballpark up.
I guess they were
groundbreaking. Yeah. Anyways, sorry, Brian.
Staff was sitting out in the sun. Mr. Mayor, Mr. Vice Mayor, yes, we will be looking at that, and that's part of the reason why we've been entering into some discussions with Newland. One of the options is to be able to have different options for residents. Residents always don't want to utilize one facility. Going to an HOA pool may not be exactly what they have in mind for entertaining their family. They may want to go to a facility like this that offers a few more facilities. As part of our Parks Master Plan that we're working on, this is one of many facilities that will be provided throughout the city, and so there's going to be several of these that you're going to be coming to see over the next 15 years to you.
But I can't help it. I mean, I'm in that demographic. I lived down there for 5 years. I paid my dues, and that pool got built about a year before I left. And man, if our family didn't use that pool, I wouldn't have gone, an extra mile or two to drive down here. Now my kids get to be 12, 13 years old. That flow rider and the lazy river look a little bit more attractive than they do for the 4-year-old at the time and the younger one. But I want to make sure our placement is correct here. This one is about, 2 miles from Star Point, and probably 2.5 miles from Star Point.
And Montecito is done, the pool is
Montecito,
or they're building it.
it's questionable, sounds like.
Mayor, Council, Montecito is actually only in the planning stage at this time, is what.
Where is it?
It is well south, down by the Rainbow Water Treatment Facility. It's down on that very southern port portion.
I know this is, oh, you've got the
Good.
Well, yes, you can. I don't think it is very good.
Montecito is planned as far as, I've seen the architecture drawings of the plans for it, so there is more serious than just sometime in the future. We've been told by Newland that by 2009 it will be online, the new facility. It is about a mile at the most from this facility. The other one is maybe a mile and a half at the most from this facility. So, and they're one's north, one's south of it. So, they're serving the same constituency, and there's nothing to the east right now.
Okay, thank you.
To follow on that same point, I mean, we took away a skate park or an extreme sports facility of some sort in this area, and I like the idea of a flow rider because it gives a bit more year-round use to that activity. I mean, I see the demographic that's going to use a skate park is going to use your more active elements of this. So I don't come to a conclusion this evening. I just bring the points up because I think they're valid points for us to have a dialogue on, especially when you're talking about $11.6, $14.6 million and a change in our capital from 5.6 to that number. So, I think it's something for us to consider. What? Well, I've got other questions. I don't know if other people have thoughts on that.
I have one.
Let me go over here.
Get rid of the floor.
Let's get to this side,
I guess we're
and
coming.
then we'll come back, all right?
We always talk about this public-private partnership, we like to do in the city. It's too bad we didn't talk to Montecito and the other development, and use part of the private on their side and come together and build one for the communities.
Joanne, you were next.
Well, I have numerous questions, so I was kind of waiting for everybody to get through it. Okay, well, this first question really pertains to this, but it pertains to all these parks that are next to the schools, and especially when we're talking about a lazy river. And as a 20-year-old that went down the salt with a beer in my hand, I'd like to know what kind of alcohol issues we're going to be talking about with these parks next to schools. So that's a question I'd like to bring up.
Well, I can answer that. Go ahead.
Thanks.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Osborne, currently alcohol is allowed in our parks. Glass bottles are not allowed in the parks. However, when you have an aquatic facility like this, there's additional rules where typically you're not going to allow food and beverage within that water area because of the contamination and the filtering.
Good, thank you. Okay, I think that, especially along with Mr. Marshall's comment, I believe that the competition pool, I think is vital to have with that high school. I'm truly in favor of that. I will tell you, though, having to deal with the YMCA and that Olympic-sized pool and the cost that has come from that, what are we talking about in the size? I mean, if you look at this whole picture of all this water and all the maintenance of this, I mean, you've already stated how much it's going to cost to build it. I have real concerns about the price of upkeep, and if we're talking about a heated pool and the price that's come along with that, do we really, truly know where we're talking with this kind of money? Or is that still in the...
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Osborne, we haven't gotten into the detail of the O&M yet, simply because of we haven't nailed down all of the details and what parts of this project would be completed. I would estimate for an aquatic facility like this, the annual O&M would probably be somewhere in the vicinity of $300,000.
Are we doing solar on that?
I'm sorry?
How much
Solar to heat the pool?
6.
is it heated?
Parts of this could be heated, yes. You wouldn't necessarily heat the entire facility.
Would we look at solar?
We would look at solar as an option, yes.
No, that's fine. I mean, that, if I'm not mistaken, the Olympic pool there at the Y cost us $600,000 this year.
Yeah.
And it's a heated pool. And they tried with covers and everything. I mean, these are things that we can't let bite us in the butt and take us by surprise like the Y did.
Just the heat there was $25,000 or $30,000 a month.
And I know that's something to look at.
Just the gas.
Can I speak to that a second?
But yes.
The lap pool itself is heat on a pool loses through the square foot surface area of the pool. And the pool that you're talking about, the YMCA, is the 50 meter, right?
Big guy.
Yeah. This dive lap pool is the only one it's going to be heated. The leisure pool could have some programming on where we can transfer the heater over to the leisure pool to heat it during that training season, where you are trying to train kids at an earlier date, maybe the water's too cold. But just to give you an idea, Festival Ranch is 12,000 square foot surface area, and the heating on that's $25,000 a month. And so that's 12,000 square feet. You don't have 12,000 square feet at the dive lap pool. The dive lap pool's roughly just a little bit under and over 8,000 square feet. And so kind of do the math on that a little bit and kind of gives you an idea of just the heating or the gas requirements for that pool. We're not heating the lazy river component. We're not heating the leisure pool except in those, but there might be a month and a half there you might heat that leisure pool, but you wouldn't do it in combination of all the interactive play toys because you're aerating the water at that point in time. And so we thought about that economics, about whether we can use, good, smart design in that heating element. Also pool blankets, good pool blankets that are commercial stated and not just semi-commercial. So.
Thank you. With that lazy river, was there discussion about will they be renting tubes, or will people be bringing their own floating device?
Well,
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Your question?
We'll go to Georgia now.
No, that's okay. I'm like marking them off, so
I
keep
feel
going,
like I should
Joanne.
have mailed these in.
Anyway, if you have anything.
I'm sorry.
there are revenue
Should have been to a public meeting, it was all discussed.
There are revenue components that the programming really has to dictate. City of Goodyear, parks have to dictate what is charged and what isn't charged. The tubes are usually something that is provided you do not bring, because the only place you can use tubes in an aquatic facility is the lazy river. You can't do it in the leisure pool, you can't do it in the dive lap pool. So that's kind of a programming thing that I think still has to be worked out. What are those revenue centers and how can they be best utilized?
Okay, now we'll go to Georgia, then we'll go over here, and back to you, Joanne.
I appreciate Mr. Marshall's remarks about, and I can understand your concern, but I do want to bring to focus this is a city park. And so we chose to go ahead and build this park up in that area before the central part of the city. So the facility is really supposed to be for the entire city. But along with that, I understand where you're coming from, because it just seems so redundant to keep having the same facility built here and there.
My thought on that is this would be unique for the city, the lazy river,
Yes.
whereas it would draw more of the city down in this place.
You're right, but we really don't have a water facility in Goodyear that even comes close to this. We have our one pool. We have the YMCA, you pay to go there. So it does furnish a good segment of our population, something they don't have. So I guess we're like you are. We're like, well, I don't know. And I just think it's kind of a shame, because I don't know the intricacy of all of this, but we have all these developers out there. They're building pools, they're building recreational areas. I don't know why we don't get together with them and talk to them and see if they'd like to give their funds to help the city build some of these areas that we need to build, because we need so many parks. So are we being redundant? I think so sometimes. So would we need their helping hand? Yes. So would they be willing to give up having that responsibility of putting those facilities in their communities and combine them with the city? Just throw that out there. Kind of a little late now, I think, for this, but
Well, maybe not.
they might come to the table if you go to them and talk to them about it. It's so, that's why I asked you, a mile from the house, that's nothing for somebody to travel to go to the pool. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Cavalier?
Yes, a couple of items. One, in reference to the use of the pool and the fact that there is another pool for the residents. number one, the high school will be using this pool, and they will be using it more than just for competition. I'm sure they will be using the other for training. And the high school takes in more than just the city of Goodyear. It goes beyond that. It goes into the area west of the city. It also, of course, the park should be available for everyone in the city of Goodyear. Also, some of the residents in the city of Goodyear or in Estrella cannot go to the Star Point because you're only allowed to have just the parents and the children under the age of 18. If you're over the age of 18, you can't have a permit to go to the pool. You have to pay a fee to go to that pool. So it's only for those. So it is limited. Star Point is limited in that respect. So I just wanted to say that as a point of how this is done. Now, the other thing is the, I don't remember what the other thing was. I should have written it down. Go ahead.
Vice Mayor?
Staff, is there a street signal plan for Estrella Parkway and the entrance to the high school in the park?
I've been yelling about that.
At this time, to my knowledge, there is not.
Okay.
Or at least
And then,
what's that?
no, I know on West Star there is.
No.
Right? On West Star there eventually would be. No?
No.
Questionable. Okay.
Eventually, yes.
You know, I've got to, before I commit to option one or option two, I've got to be a little bit more satisfied on the O&M costs and the long-term costs and see the numbers, not just talk about them. So I'd almost like to see some follow-up on that. I'd like to see a really close look at, I mean, Councilman Cavalier makes a very good point. There are some limitations to the pools, whether in Montecito or whether in Estrella Mountain Ranch. Councilwoman Lord makes a good point that, some stuff is open to the public, some is not. But we were talking, in my mind, we were talking about an extreme sports facility that was a year-round option. It was a year-round facility, and now we're talking about a seasonal facility. We're talking about a seasonal facility that's going to have a very, very large impact. I ask a question tonight. I mean, how many parking places do we have in shared use with Estrella High School? How many are?
Mayor, Vice Mayor, currently we're installing about 100 to 104 in Phase 1.
Right.
This one here is roughly probably 80.
So 184 spots.
And then currently the high school has approximately 800 to 1,000 spots combined in their whole facility.
Okay. So there's plenty of parking down there, without a doubt. I think we're putting a facility in that it's going to have a huge impact 6 months of the year. I mean, you're going to have a lot of people at this thing. I mean, we've got, at the community park, we've got the YMCA, we've got baseball, we've got the skate park, we've got tennis, we've got now the water facility
This
there.
has more spaces.
This definitely has more spaces. But I would venture to guess when they have a regional meet, we just flat out run out of spaces at all of those facilities I just mentioned when they have a regional meet at the Y.
Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. Part of the IGA that we have with the school district is our recreational staff and the representative from the high school have to meet and coordinate all those schedules. That's as a priority for the aquatics facility, the city has priority, and then the high school has secondary priority. So that they're able to communicate and work in a very good team atmosphere, that we have plenty of time to plan those things ahead, that we're not impacting other potential functions within the high school or the park.
I'll end on this in the sense that I'd like to see more O&M numbers, which I've stated already. If I was forced into a decision tonight, I'd ask you to go back and talk about that combination. You talked about the potential of having a lazy river and a play pool, but I really would like to see some more discussion on the redundancy. I mean, I question that with staff as whether or not this was the appropriate place. If we checkerboard these facilities throughout the community, is it more appropriate for us to take, half of $14 million and invest that in an identical facility? It's a beautiful facility. I love the facility, but is it more appropriate at this time, somewhere between the river and I-10? Once we have a site identified, or once we have the city center area done, is this a more appropriate facility down there, and we retreat back to a skate park facility at this location, or other facilities to utilize in this area? So I'm torn right now. I mean, if you were asking me to make the decision tonight, I'd be hard pressed to put $14.6 million into this from our CIP. So a couple other notes. I like the top lot that you can expose in phase one. I think that's great. It's definitely vacant over there by the soccer fields. Having experienced that for 16 years of my life, it was always hard to find a little cousin or whomever somewhere to go and play while we were on the field. So I like that idea. It's a beautiful facility, though. I'm not knocking the facility by my comments.
Okay, Joanne? Are you finished, Joanne? Or?
I had one question about the map, and then just one comment. On the lazy river, for example, if I am on there with my 4-year-old that all of a sudden I have to go potty. Now, it looks like this restroom, one restroom over there by the children's play area is far too far to take her. But the one that's in the bathhouse, is that not another restroom area? And how far actually is that?
We have, if the phasing of the lazy river would bring with it another mechanical building and another restroom facility within that price tag, which is where my thumb is right now.
Right.
So it's right there where that lazy river component is.
Okay, that answered that. And really, this last statement, I think, will be addressed more when the full parks master plan comes to us. But I want my teens addressed. I want them to have their extreme sports complex, and it's not obviously in this plan, and they deserve it and they need it, and I will continue to fight for that. That was it. Thank you.
Okay, Councilmember Lord.
Just tell me if this is not possible, but do we have consensus where we would have staff approach Montecito? Is that beyond our thinking to see? I mean, I don't know.
Beyond our thinking, I'm not. Certainly, why don't you talk to Montecito? You talk to them. And then if you can make progress, then we'll do that. Okay?
I'll in favor.
Okay.
Well, but if they're, why would we, if they're thinking of doing a facility
No,
there
I'm
that's going
saying
to be
if they're
supported.
not in the point and they want to come in and help support our facility and help pay for this facility, and their community's homeowners association lowers because they don't have to support their pool and whatever they're doing, I'm just saying that's kind of cooperation between all of them. I don't know if it's too late. It's just something that you're smiling down there.
You want to take that on and see?
I'm happy to take
and
it on with
if
staff.
there's a potential, we'll go for it.
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Lord, city staff has had some initial communication with Newland communities, and we will continue to have those conversations with them. This is a subject that has been broached already, so we're looking into these options.
I think staff should do this.
Because that is, that would help the reduction of all the citizens that have to pay for this and would give everybody.
It offers the residents of Australia the opportunity to have more amenities in an aquatic facility than Newland Communities is prepared to place in either the Star Point or in Montecito.
Lower?
But I'm at your disposal if you would like that.
Okay, and Councilmember Cavalier thinks you should go to staff, so maybe you can work with staff on it.
Sure, whatever.
Are we finished?
No, I have one more comment. Can I make one
Yes,
more
sir.
comment? Be patient, Mayor.
He's right. I should be more patient. I agree. Okay.
Councilwoman Osborne and I attended the Governor's Housing Conference last week. And during that conference, one of the things that came out of it, I don't know if you were in that session with me or not, but one of the things that came out of that conference was that if the cities want to sustain their neighborhoods, if the cities want to sustain each of their community neighborhoods, they have to do more for amenities for those neighborhoods. Tot parks, these small empty parks, are not going to do it. We have to have active parks, and we have to have amenities, all kinds of amenities that will cover all of our neighborhoods, because otherwise, what they've found in the past, in the very recent past, is that these are the neighborhoods that go downhill. These are the neighborhoods that begin to die off, and then we have to go in and do rehab, which we do not wish to do. But anyway, they have found that this is the kind of thing, bringing these amenities into these neighborhoods that will keep the neighborhoods alive and at the top, and keep the neighborhoods associations involved with what's going on. So again, say that needs to be looked at.
Okay, summarizing here, Brian, I think that there's an interest in knowing more about the O&M.
Yes, indeed, and we will
Ramifications of
proceed
this.
with a study on that.
Charles had, I think, a valid point which should be considered, and that is that center area may not be necessary. You're going to talk to Newland Communities
Yes.
and work with Councilmember Lord on that one. And you'll come back to us. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Impact on the CIP. I don't know if that's something everybody wants to say or not.
I assume you've already looked at the impact on the CIP on this.
We have looked at the impact on the CIP, and we're in discussions with Ken Kennedy on additional funding through the CIP for this project.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll now move to Councilmember's report on current events. Normally, I would do this during a council meeting, but I'm not going to be here for the next one. So let me just put this up here and state, if I can. On Saturday, September 15, Spike, the Super Bowl team captain of the Arizona Super Bowl 42 host committee, made Goodyear the 22nd stop on its game ball road trip to the state of Arizona. The city of Goodyear was celebrating the 6th annual Relay for Life of the Southwest Valley at the Goodyear Community Park at that time. So Spike, the Super Bowl, kicked off the Relay for Life by kicking a football to the runners that were age 12 and under at 6 p.m. Afterwards, Spike presented the official Super Bowl 42 game ball to Mayor Jim Cavanaugh. And then when the runners took off, he met and greeted the Goodyear residents. And he's traveled 2,286 miles thus far on the 42-stop game ball road trip to the state of Arizona. And his next official game ball road trip is in Sedona. So this is for us, City of Goodyear, from Spike on the Super Bowl host committee. But it was done during a great event, and that is the Relay for Life. Okay? Great. Other things? Okay. City Manager, anything? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.